Chapter 2. It was toward the middle of the summer that I met Donald Shimoda. In 4 years flying, I had never found another pilot in the line of work I do. Flying with the wind from town to town, selling rides in an old biplane, $3 for 10 minutes in the air. But one day, just north of Ferris, Illinois, I looked down from the cockpit of my fleet, and there was an old Travel Air 4000, gold and white, landed pretty as you please in the lemon emerald hay. Mine's a free life, but it does get lonely sometimes. I saw the biplane there, thought about it for a few seconds, and decided it would be no harm to drop in. Throttle back to idle, a full rudder slip, and the fleet and I fell sideways towards the ground. Wind in the flying wires, that gentle good sound, the slow pock-pock of the old engine loafing its propeller around. Goggles up to better watch the landing, cornstalks in a green leaf jungle swishing close below, flicker of a fence, and then just cut hay as far as I could see. Stick and rudder out of the slip, a nice little round out above the land, hay brushing the tires, then the familiar calm crashing rattle of hard ground under wheel, slowing, and now a quick burst of noise, and power to taxi beside the other plane and stop. Throttle back, switch off, the soft clack-clack of the propeller, spinning down to stop in the total quiet of July. The pilot of the Travel Air sat in the hay, his back against the left wheel of his airplane, and he watched me. For half a minute I watched him too, looking at the mystery of his calm. I wouldn't have been so cool just to sit there and watch another plane land in the field with me parked 10 yards away. I nodded, liking him without knowing why. "You looked lonely," I said across the distance between us. "So did you." "Don't mean to bother you. If I'm one too many, I'll be on my way." "No, I've been waiting for you." I smiled at that. "Sorry I'm late." "That's all right." I pulled off my helmet and goggles, climbed out of the cockpit, and stepped to the ground. This feels good when you've been a couple hours in fleet. "Hope you don't mind ham and cheese," he said. "Ham and cheese and maybe an ant." No handshake, no introduction of any kind. He was not a large man, hair to his shoulders, blacker than the rubber of the tire he leaned against. Eyes dark as hawk's eyes, the kind I like in a friend, and in anyone else made me uncomfortable indeed. He could have been a karate master on his way to some quietly violent demonstration. I accepted the sandwich and thermos cup of water. "Who are you, anyway?" I said. "Years I've been hopping rides, never seen another barnstormer out in the fields." "Not much else I'm fit to do," he said, happily enough. "A little mechanicking, welding, rough neck a bit, skinning cats. I stay in one place too long, I get problems. So I made the airplane, and now I'm in the barnstrong business." "What kind of cat?" "I've been mad for diesel tractors since I was a kid." "D8s, D9s, just for a little while, in Ohio." "D9s, big as a house, double compound low gear. Can they really push a mountain?" "There are better ways of moving mountains," he said with a smile that lasted for maybe a tenth of a second. I leaned for a minute, against the lower wing of the plane, watching him. A trick of the light, it was hard to look at the man closely. As if there were a light around his head, fading in the background a faint, misty silver. "Something wrong?" he asked. "What kind of problems did you have?" "Oh, nothing much. I just like to keep moving these days, same as you." I took my sandwich and walked around his plane. It was a 1928 or 1929 machine, and it was completely unscratched. Factories don't make airplanes as new as his was, parked there in the hay. 20 coats of hand-rubbed butyrate dope. At least, paint like a mirror pulled tight over the wooden ribs of the thing. Dawn, in Old English, gold leaf under the rim of his cockpit, and the registration on the map case said, D.W. Shimoda. The instruments were new out of the box, original 1928 flight instruments. Varnished oak control stick and rubber bar, throttle, mixture, spark advance on the left. You never see spark advances anymore, even on the best restored antiques. No scratch anywhere, not a patch on the fabric, not a single streak of engine oil from the cowling, not a blade of straw on the floor of the cockpit, as though his machine hadn't flown at all, but instead had materialized on the spot through some time warp across half a century. I felt an odd, creepy cold on my neck. "How long you been hopping passengers?" I called across the plane to him. "About a month now, 5 weeks." He was lying. 5 weeks in the fields, and I don't care who you are. You've got dirt and oil on the plane, and there's a straw on the cockpit floor no matter what. But this machine, no oil on the windshield, no flying hay steins on on the leading edges of the wings and tail, no bugs smashed on the propeller. That is not possible for an airplane flying through an Illinois summer. I studied the Traveler another 5 minutes, and when I went back, I sat down in the hay under the wing, facing the pilot. I wasn't afraid, I still liked the guy, but something was wrong. Why are you not telling me the truth? I have told you the truth, Richard, he said. The name is painted on my airplane, too. A person does not hop passengers for a month in a Traveler without getting a little oil on the plane, my friend. A little dust, one patch in the fabric, hay, for God's sake, on the floor. He smiled calmly at me. There are some things you do not know. In that moment, he was a strange other planet person. I believed what he said, but I had no way of explaining his jewel airplane parked out in a summer hayfield. This is true, but someday I'll know them all. And then you can have my airplane, Donald, because I won't need it to fly. He looked at me with interest and raised his black eyebrows. Oh, tell me. I was delighted. Someone wanted to hear my theory. People couldn't fly for a long time, I don't think, because they didn't think it was possible. So of course they didn't learn the first principle of aerodynamics. I want to believe that there's another principle somewhere. We don't need airplanes to fly or move through walls or get to planets. We can learn how to do it without machines anywhere, if we want to. He half smiled seriously and nodded his head one time. And you think that you will learn that what you wish to by hopping $3 rides out of hayfields. The only learning that's mattered is what I got on my own, doing what I want to do. There isn't, but if there were a soul on earth who could teach me more of what I want to know than my airplane can, and the sky, I'd be off right now to find him or her. The dark eyes looked at me level. Don't you believe you're guided if you really want to learn this thing? I'm guided, yes. Isn't anyone? I've always felt something kind of watching over me, sort of. And you think you'll be led to a teacher who can help you. If the teacher doesn't happen to be me, yes. Maybe that's the way it happens, he said. A modern new pickup truck hushed down the road towards us, raising a thin brown fog of dust, and it stopped by the field. The door opened, an old man got out, and a girl of 10 or so. The dust stayed in the air. It was that still. Selling rides, are you? Said the man. The field was Donald Shimoda's discovery. I stayed quiet. Yes, sir, he said brightly. Feel like flying, do you, today? If I did, you cut my didos. Turn any flip-flops with me up there? The man's eyes twinkled, watching to see if he knew him well enough behind his country bumpkin talk. Will if you want, won't if you don't. And you want the dear Lord's fortune, I suppose. $3 cash, sir, for 10 minutes in the air. That is 33 1/3 cents per minute. And worth it, most people tell me. It was by an odd bystander feeling to sit there idle and listen to the way this fellow worked his trade. I liked what he said, all low-key. I had grown so used to my own way of selling rides. Guaranteed $10, 10 degrees cooler upstairs, folks. Come on up, where only birds and angels fly. All of this for $3 only, a dozen quarters from your purse or pocket. I had forgotten there might be another. There's a tension flying and selling rides alone. I was used to it, but still it was there. If I don't fly passengers, I don't eat. Now when I could sit back, not depending for my dinner on the outcome, I relaxed for once and watched. The girl stood back and watched too. Blonde, brown-eyed, solemn-faced, she was here because her grandpa was. She did not want to fly. Most often it's the other way around. Eager kids and cautious elders. But one gets a sense for those things when it's one's livelihood, and I knew that girl wouldn't fly with us if we waited all summer. Which one of you gentlemen? The man said. Shimoda poured himself a cup of water. Richard will fly you. I'm still on my lunch hour, unless you want to wait. No, sir, I'm ready to go. Can we fly over my farm? Sure, I said. Just point the way you want to go, sir. I dumped my bedroll and tool bag and cook pots from the front cockpit of the fleet, helped the man into the passenger seat, and buckled him in. Then I slid down into the rear cockpit and fastened my own seat belt. Give me a prop, will you, Don? Yep, he brought his water cup with him and stood by the propeller. What do you want? Hot and brakes, pull it slow. The impulse will take it right out of your hand. Always when somebody pulls up the fleet propeller, they pull it up too fast, and for complicated reasons the engine won't start. But this man pulled it around ever so slowly, as though he had done it forever. The impulse spring snapped, sparks fired in the cylinders, and the old engine was running. That easy. He walked back to his airplane, sat down, and began talking to the girl. In a great burst of raw horsepower and flying straw, the fleet was in the air, climbing through 100 feet. If the engine quits now, we land in the corn. 500 feet. Now, and we can turn back, land in the hay. Now, and it's the cow pasture west. 800 feet and level, following the man's finger pointing through the wind southwest. 3 minutes airborne, and we circled the farmstead, barns the color of glowing coals, house of ivory and a sea of mint, a garden and back for food, sweet corn and lettuce and tomatoes growing. The man in the front cockpit looked down through the air as we circled the farmhouse, framed between the wings and through the flying wires of the fleet. A woman appeared on the porch below, white apron over blue dress, waving. The man waved back. They would talk later of how they could see each other so well across the sky. He looked back at me, finally with a nod to say that was enough, thanks, and we could hang back now. I flew a wide circle around Ferris to let the people know there was flying going on, and spiraled down over the hayfield to show them just where it was happening. As I slowed down to land, the banked steeply over the corn, the traveler swept off the ground and turned at once toward the farm we had just left. I flew once with a 5-ship circus, and for a moment it was that kind of busy feeling, one plane lifting off with passengers while another lands. We touched the ground with a gentle rumbling crash and rolled to the far end of the hay by the road. The engine stopped, the man unsnapped his safety belt, and I helped him out. He took a wallet from his overalls and counted dollar bills, shaking his head. "That's quite a ride, son." "We think so. It's a good product we're selling." "It's your friend that's selling." "Oh?" "I'll say, your friend could sell ashes to the devil. I'll wager, can't he now?" "How come you say that?" "The girl, of course. An airplane ride to my granddaughter, Sarah." As he spoke, he watched the traveler, a distant silver mote in the air circling the farmhouse. He spoke as a calm man speaks, noting the dead twig in the yard has just sprouted blossoms and ripe apples. "Since she's born, that girl's been wild to death about high places. Screams, just terrified. Sarah'd no more climb a tree than she'd stir hornets bare hand. Won't climb the ladder to the loft, won't go up there if the flood was rising in the yard. The girl's a wonder with machines, not too bad around animals, but heights, they are a caution to her. And there she is, up in the air." He talked on about this and other special times. He remembered when the barnstormers used to come through the Galesburg years ago, and Monmouth flying 2-wingers at the same as we flew, but doing all kinds of crazy stunts with them. I watched the distant traveler get bigger, spiral down over the field in a bank steeper than I'd ever fly with a girl afraid of heights, slip over the corn and the fence, and touch the hay in a 3-point landing that was dazzling to watch. Donald Shimoda must have been flying for a good long while to land a traveler that way. The airplane rolled to a stop beside us, no extra power required, and the propeller clanked softly to stop. I looked closely. There were no bugs on the propeller, not so much as a single fly killed on that 8-foot blade. I sprang to help, unshackled the girl's safety belt, opened the little front cockpit door for her, and showed her where to step out so her foot wouldn't go through the wing fabric. "How'd you like that?" I said. She didn't know I spoke. "Grandpa, I'm not afraid. I wasn't scared, honest. The house looked like a little toy, and Mom waved at me, and Don said I was just scared because I fell and died once, and I don't have to be afraid anymore. I'm going to be a pilot, Grandpa. I'm going to have an airplane and work on the engine myself and fly everywhere and give rides. Can I do that?" Shimoda smiled at the man and shrugged his shoulders. "He told you that you were going to be a pilot, did he, Sarah?" "No, but I am. I'm already good with engines, you know that." "Well, you can talk about that with your mother. Time for us to be getting home." The two thanked us, and one walked, one ran to the pickup truck, both changed by what had happened in the field and in the sky. 2 automobiles arrived, then another, and we had a noon rush of people who wanted to see Ferris from the air. We flew 12 or 13 flights as fast as we could get them off, and after that I made a run to the station in town to get car gas for the fleet. Then a few passengers, a few more, and it was evening and we flew solid back-to-back flights till sunset. A sign somewhere said population 200, and by dark I was thinking we had flown them all, and some out-of-towners as well. I'd forgotten the rush of flying to ask about Sarah and what Don had told her, whether he had made up the story or if he thought it was true about dying. And every once in a while I watched his plane closely while passengers changed seats. Not a mark on it, no oil drop anywhere, and he apparently flew to dodge the bugs that I had to wipe from my windshield every hour or two. There was just a little light in the sky when we quit. By the time I laid dry corn stalks in my tin stove, set them over with charcoal bricks, and lit the fire, it was full dark, the firelight throwing colors back from the airplanes parked close and from the golden straw above us. I peered into the grocery box. "It's soup or stew or SpaghettiOs," I said. "Or pears and peaches. Want some hot peaches?" "No difference," he said mildly. "Anything or nothing." "Man, aren't you hungry? This has been a busy day." "You haven't given me much to be hungry for, unless that's good stew." I opened the stew can with my Swiss Air officer's escape and evasion knife, did a similar job on the SpaghettiOs, and popped both cans over the fire. My pockets were tight with cash. This was one of those pleasanter times of a day for me. I pulled the bills out and counted, not bothering much to fold them flat. Came to $147. And I figured in my head, which is not easy for me. That's, let's see, 4 and carry the 2, 49 flights today. Broke $100 day, Don, just me and the fleet. You must have broke 200 easy. You fly mostly 2 at a time? Mostly, he said. About this teacher you're looking for, he said. I ain't looking for no teacher, I said. I am counting money. I can go a week on this. I can be rained out cold for 1 solid week. He looked at me and smiled. When you're done swimming in your money, he said, would you mind passing my stew?